Good afternoon, State Senator Jeff Rotz, Indiana State Senator Jeff Rotz here with you today, and my colleague, Indiana State Representative J.D. Prescott. We are here today just to have a friendly conversation regarding the consequences of the national election that we're facing here coming up the first part of November. I know for certain that this is the most consequential election of my lifetime. Had some conversation this morning with some folks who've been around a little bit longer and kind of referenced the 1960s and the things that happened back then. But I'm not certain that we can compare apples to apples. I know there's a lot going on in the United States at this point in time. And so Representative Prescott and myself decided this would be a good thing to do, is just have a friendly conversation about some of the things that we look at for this 2020 election at the national level. Obviously, the contrast between President Trump and previous Vice President Biden. So with that, Representative Prescott, go ahead and share anything you want. Start with question, comments, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, let's. I think you led off great there. If we just get started with the national election cycle, I agree. I think this is probably the most important election of my lifetime as well. With just the political divide in the country that we're facing, it's from everything from the Supreme Court all the way down to just local units of government and how our economy has been hit hard due to COVID-19 and the aftermath of which. So, I think I really go back a few weeks ago when Vice President Pence gave his acceptance speech to become the vice presidential Republican nominee. When he said, you have a choice on the ballot whether America is still going to be America. That's the way I look at this election cycle.
Sure, from a 50,000-foot viewpoint, couldn't agree more. We're looking at a lot of issues, and I would guess one of the things that's front and center here for us to have a conversation about would be the concept of socialism, and as opposed to the republic of which we live in and we're accustomed to. Any comments on that from a 50,000-foot viewpoint? I think that's one of the biggest issues.
Oh, I 100% agree. It's getting to be too easy anymore for the public just to accept the welfare system. You have so many people just using the system that aren't contributing anymore, and with COVID-19 and the CARES Act, it was important that some of that funding got out, but it was a prime example of how that can be abused. The $600 a week additional stipend on top of the unemployment, it was there for a good reason, and it wasn't a lot of individuals' fault that they were unemployed because the government told them they had to shut down. But at the same time, you do have a certain amount of people abusing that they were making more money through unemployment than they were on their 9-to-5 job. So I think that's an example of how that can be abused, and then you just see some of these rioters and looters out in the streets. Well, they're not working. They're more than likely living off the system or getting paid by the other side to go out and destroy property. And I mean that's kind of what you're running into with that socialist type mentality.
And I agree with that. I one of the things I thought of when you said that is government is not the answer for any of us. Government plays a huge role in the social piece of things, but self-responsibility for each one of us, and that includes for our actions and good work ethic and go out and participate in the economy, is the best thing for any individual. I think inherent in each one of us is the desire to contribute to society and something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
And when that's not utilized in a person's life, it creates a lot of excess time and I think internal anger in a lot of ways that is hard to express and don't even understand the origin of it necessarily, but causes a lot of the ills that we have in society today.
I completely agree.
So, with that, any piece, any other additional pieces. I mean, socialism is certainly a problem, and honestly, I don't want government involved in every piece of my life. There's a place for government, but it's not in every part of my life.
100% agree. At the state house, we have constituents come to us with issues all the time that we need to address. Some of
Sure.
which need to be taken care of through legislation. Others need to be taken care of working with the departments and others. But at the same time, I tell constituents all the time. Sometimes it's not a problem that we're responsible to fix. It's not our job to fix that. We need to. At times, that there are just issues that are moral issues, and we can do a lot to help and protect the moral well-being of the country and the state, but at the same time, it's up to personal responsibility, and you can't rely on government for every solution.
Sure, and good morals
Mm-hmm.
are definitely part of it. And I often say this, that if the vast majority of the people don't do the right things or follow the law, that's when things begin to fall apart. If the state police on I-70 here or local police, if everybody went 90 miles an hour, they're not created to take that many people into account all at one time. And so it's incumbent upon us as individuals to take responsibility, both morally, both in the other decisions we make, to follow the law, whether we like it or not. And so that's part of the answer to where we're at, certainly. I think the cost of COVID, certainly, to our nation, we'll be paying for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that it was difficult on a lot of families. We're at over 200,000 deaths in the nation at this point in time, and that's almost unconscionable in a lot of respects. Any comments on that?
Yeah, it's devastating that we've had so much loss of life due to COVID, and I was with one of our colleagues yesterday that's a doctor at the State House, and we were talking some of the medical impacts of COVID, and when you look at the death rate specifically, early on it was a lot higher because it was a new virus, a new form of coronavirus. And as our medical experts have been looking at different therapeutics and I think we're on the uphill track. The death rate is extremely low now.
Mm-hmm.
Again, any loss of life is tragic, but we've taken it and learned from it. But even going beyond that, like we bring up going down 70 and different speed limits, it's where do you find that balance on what type of precautions to put in place and how does it affect the economy and your livelihood and your freedom to live versus how is it going to affect just your ability to survive as a population and how it's going to affect from a pro-life standpoint. And then you take those numbers and compare that to other things. So like in Indiana, for example, we're at roughly 3,000 COVID-related deaths, but
Sure.
There's 9,500 babies murdered every year in Indiana. So it's through abortion. So it's how do you where do you draw that comparison? There's other pro-life issues that we need to focus on as well. And I'm not saying we don't need to. I'm not trying to take anything away from COVID. It's something we need to take seriously.
Correct.
But at the same time, like I said, slow the speed limit down to 50 mile an hour on I-70. You're gonna save a lot of lives.
Sure.
So it's where do you find that balance, and
Right.
where does the government get involved?
Right, and that's a very good comment, by the way. If we slowed it down to 50, more lives would be saved from accidents on I-70 or other roads for that matter. We're just picking on I-70 because we both travel on it often.
Right.
But I agree. But where's that balance?
Right.
Knowing that every time we go up from 50, that there are the percentage or potential of more fatalities exists, and so I agree with you wholeheartedly. And those are very difficult decisions to make. There's no two ways about it. So that's an incredibly important statement. That there's no misunderstanding it. So from a national perspective, the great divide between the former Vice President Biden and President Donald Trump, anything that is glaring in addition to the concept of where we're headed should either one, if we stay in the track we're on, or the Biden camp. When it comes to, we already talked about socialism and kind of the direction of the economy. I remember President Trump said, I think it was in the address to there was a State of the Union address, essentially, and said America will never be a socialist nation. And I struggle with even thinking that, knowing the contrast between the two, that anybody would ever consider our nation becoming socialist. Apart from that, any other highlights that we need to that you'd like to mention personally?
Yeah, to me, I think the most important role of the President of the United States is protecting our nation through both foreign and domestic threats. And when you look at what the changes in the military over the past few years under the leadership of President Trump, he has done a great job at rebuilding our military. I know the previous administration, they were weakening the military. They were not making those investments that we need to, as well as our trade situation with foreign countries, including China, and then with the European countries, getting them to pay their fair share into the global organization. So just our global presence and the strength of the country. I fully trust that President Trump has America first in his mindset, and when he's leading our military efforts, just peace through strength. And it was the Reagan philosophy, and I think that carries through with the Trump-Pence team as well. We want to have the strongest military in the world. We hope we don't have to use it, but if we do, we're more than capable.
Sure. And I couldn't agree more. I know my sentiment on like the trade deficits that we've been experiencing, the increase in the trade deficits. We only have ourselves to blame for it, essentially. The cost of products that come out of China, even with the cost of shipping, is attractive to us. No two ways about it as a nation. However, I often make the comment that who is the best nation to be the powerhouse on the globe, and the United States has been number one forever, and so my question often is, if not us, who?
Right.
And if it's somebody else, what's the premise behind their cultural philosophy? And China as a communist nation, we surely don't want them to be the powerhouse militarily on the globe. And we've been lining their pockets indirectly, at least from our perspective anyway, as consumers in the United States, for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And yeah,
100% agree. And then also bring into the fold the nuclear deal with Iran that was negotiated in the Obama administration, and Biden said that he wants to go back to a similar deal as that. So I mean, there's multiple other countries with China and Iran. It's a similar pattern with when you compare the Biden plan versus the Trump plan. And I full-heartedly trust the president.
Yeah, and I think that in the debates the other night, one of the tragic things that happened, in my opinion, in the Obama administration, we're being somewhat critical of something we don't know all the inner workings of, which we've learned a great deal of being in the Indiana General Assembly. Is there are many things that happen internally that may look bad sometimes on the outside, but when you get in the internal workings, you understand that there are circumstances that are beyond our control.
Right.
The concept of billions of dollars in cash going to I picture a skid of money being dropped off or going out the side of an airplane. Certainly does not look good from the Obama administration to Iran back in, I suppose that was in 11 or 12, if I'm not mistaken. So at any rate, no doubt about that. Maybe it was later than that. Maybe it was in 15 or 16, I want to make sure I get my timeline. But again, you know, does not look good. There's no
Right.
two ways about it. So, anything else on the national scene you want to mention?
Well, the Supreme Court's a big topic
Huge
right
issue.
now,
Yeah.
with Amy Coney Barrett getting the nomination to fill the vacancy of the late Justice Ginsburg. And then beyond filling the seat, you know, the opposition, the Democrats, they have not said whether they're going to try and pack the courts and try and sway the balance of power if elected. So
Now let's
so
break that
that's-
down just a little bit.
Yeah.
So, what does packing the court mean? So, forever in the United States, we've had it's 9.
Yes, since the Roosevelt era,
Yeah, so we're talking a great deal of time.
1930s. Yeah.
So we're talking about 90 years or so,
Mhm.
80, 90 years that we've been at that number. And essentially packing the court would be additional nominations to the court. And I suppose that would be done legislatively at the federal level, and maybe not even legislation, because in the Constitution, the way it's written, if there was one Supreme Court justice, that would suffice for the Constitution.
Right.
And so what they're essentially saying is, if Amy Barrett, if she's confirmed between now and the election, or between now and January, should President Trump lose the election, that they would take matters into their own hands and pack the Supreme Court so their agenda could continue or be proliferated off into the future. And I struggle with that concept deeply, just to get your agenda down the road. One of the other things that I want to mention, thinking about some of the behavior. So since Donald Trump has been our president, there's been an unprecedented attacks against him. And one of the things that I like to look at or think about is the impeachment hearings. And when it came down to it, the reason for impeachment that was passed, in my opinion, was childish, and quite frankly made our U.S. Senate and representatives look like 12-year-old children, to be honest with you. And that's pretty harsh, but that's the way I feel about it. The bottom line is, it was very thin ice on anything that they brought to the table, and when what they did pass was almost laughable.
I 100% agree. There, you look at going back and looking at the impeachment hearings. They were digging, and they've been digging and digging and digging for dirt on the president for the past 4 years, and keep coming up empty every time. But the House House Democrats ran, saying
Right.
they were going to impeach the president 2 years ago, and that was their goal, and that's what they were, their targeted advertisement to try and win back the House. And you know, you look at the AOCs, the Ilhan Omars in the party, and the Democrat base is getting more and more radical. So, I mean, I think Nancy Pelosi felt like she didn't have an option but to try and impeach the president, even though she had nothing, or else she was going to lose her speakership. That's just from rural Indiana, looking at the politics in Washington. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, that's certainly what it looked like, no doubt about it. You know, when you mention that, I want to step back and just make a comment. I watched a testimony from a gal who immigrated to the United States from the Middle East somewhere, whatever country it was. I'm not 100% sure, but her comment to the congresswoman from Minnesota was, "Why in the world would you want to wreck? The very reason that we migrated to the United States is because it's a free country and it operates the way that it does, and it gives opportunity to everyone, maybe not equally at times, but with hard work and effort, you can make it in the United States." I still believe the American dream is alive and well. It doesn't mean we don't have problems at all, but I think that was probably the most pointed comment I'd ever heard from someone who migrated to the U.S. And why in the world do you want to change something that the very few reasons that brought you to the United States of America, why would you change it? So Certainly. The other comment I'd like to make, and you'll have to have been around for a while to know exactly what I'm talking about, but back in the President George W. Bush era, a reporter by the name of Dan Rather reported on a subject matter that he didn't do their due diligence, or the news organization didn't do their due diligence in fact finding completely all the way back to see if what was reported on was true. And at that time, Dan Rather was the Walter Cronkite of news anchors. And so now I'm digging way back into many years ago. I don't even know if you remember Walter Cronkite, maybe the name.
I know the name, but
Okay,
a little bit
so-
before my time.
Yeah, well, I can remember going to bed and, when I was a kid and hearing the 11 o'clock news and catching his anchorship, but what I'm saying is at that time he went out with in shame, essentially, because he reported something that he didn't fact find to make sure that what he reported on was actual truth. And I think in some respects today, part of the reason why we have a lot of issue and divisiveness in the United States is because there's a lot of news reports that are facts mixed with opinion, and whenever you do that, and then the viewers take that as the truth, we cause ourselves our own problems. And so I think that's part of what our issue is today in a very big way. Any comments on that?
Yeah, it's you see it all the time, and it's blatantly obvious now at the national level. Each reporter, it seems like at the national level, they all have their own political agenda. That's what they're trying to push. They're, even if they disclose the facts, they're only disclosing certain facts to drive a specific narrow-minded view. And then even all the way down at the local level, we've seen it firsthand. Heck, I last spring had a newspaper interview that the words that was quoted for my quote was just a blatant lie. It wasn't even what I said. So when it's happening to us at the local level,
Imagine what
at the
happens
state level, it just expands all the way up.
Yeah.
So, the media, and there are some honest reporters still too. I mean, I think
Agree. I could name some that I have been or have worked with me locally here that have done a phenomenal job of reporting in a non-biased way.
100% agree. Throughout my district, I have a good relationship with most of the
Sure.
most of the journalists and news reporters, but yeah, you can. There's bad actors in the industry, and this is probably one of the media industry and the news anchors or news reporters. It's probably one of the rare industries where the majority are bad and the minority are good reporters, in my opinion. And like you look at every other industry, and you have a few bad actors causing a bad rep for the other 90%. That's kind of the way I look at it.
And the only additional comment I'd make on that, I often hear as well, it's about the numbers, the number of viewers that we're really after. Well, nothing should come before the truth.
100%.
So, and that is being a little bit critical, and I can't help myself. If that's the truth, that's the truth. So, need to say the truth and live it. So, anything else on the federal level that you have comments on or would like to bring up?
Well, the whole climate change initiative and the Green New Deal, I mean, this kind of goes back to the economy in a sense for me, but, as a Republican, coming from a farm family, having two boys, we all want clean air, clean water,
Sure.
and protect the environment and take care, but at the same time, the left-wing ideology behind the Green New Deal would just destroy the economy of our country. And, if you go through each issue that they have, it doesn't add up. We have cleaner air in the United States than what we ever have. We have some wildfires going on out in California due to, in my opinion, poor forest management. But I mean, there and we've got storms and hurricanes, but when I look at the storms, we have cycles, and you go back and find the data, and those hurricanes have been around for years. And everyone needs to remember God is in control, and if He wants the hurricanes to stop, the hurricanes will stop.
Well, and that's one of the other things is faith. That's incredibly important as well, and that for myself and yourself as well set the moral base of our behaviors. And not that we, I'll speak for myself that I don't hit the mark, but I'll also say that through forgiveness and God and His desires and His Spirit that lives within me, continue to move forward and move in the right direction. And so, I'm glad you brought that piece up too. Now that you totally switched, I was thinking of something else to say, and I forgot now because of that. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Bottom line, no two ways about it. From a national perspective, we're facing a lot of turmoil in our nation, and I hope and pray that as we move from this election on out, that we can find a place of relative peace internally within our nation. The Bible's clear: a house divided against itself cannot stand. A nation divided against itself cannot stand. And so we're at a pretty big crossroad here.
I agree, and I pray every night for the just the peace and security of our nation, for the president, and for just leaders all around the country. And one thing that's been in my prayers here recently, that 4 years ago I would have never thought we would have to would be in question, but I really hope that there's peace after the election.
Yeah.
You see the violence in the streets after some of these police indictments, and again, this goes back to I think 99% of cops are good, but one or two bad actors can cause an issue. And then the media narrative on issues that were justified or vice versa. Not all the facts have been presented. I shouldn't necessarily say justified, because you don't know until you get all the information. But either way, one bad action does not justify destroying businesses, destroying personal property, beating people to a pulp, and so killing people, exactly. So we've seen that leading up to this summer through some of these different issues, and the threats that we're hearing about not accepting the election results on the other side, and rioting and looting in the streets. I just pray that does not happen, and that we can have a peaceful time after the election, and then all the way through Inauguration Day.
And I agree. And I want to, on the police brutality, I agree with you that there are some bad actors, and maybe they're good individuals that just went through a divorce or something personally in their lives that have caused them to misbehave. We all have those things that happen as well, where we would fall outside of our normal behavior. But there's still no excuse, and the law is the law, and the law will fulfill itself. And I know the recent Breonna Taylor issue, there was a lot of pushback because of the grand jury's ruling there. But looking at, and I'm not in the middle of it, can't defend it. We have to trust that the grand jury looked at the rule of law, the circumstances that happened within that, which you and I or the general public will never know at all. Right. All the specific pieces of it. There's still a pending case. My understanding is that in that situation, it's not totally exonerated, the whole thing, but we have to trust the laws, and the only real way to fix it, if there are loopholes in the law, is to fix the law.
Exactly.
And so, because a nation that doesn't follow its laws will end up in anarchy, meaning the streets will look like they have in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, in other places in the United States, including right here in Indiana. We had, the initial problem in Minnesota. There was some misbehavior here that there was some stand down from the police, and I disagree with that behavior. We need to follow the law. The other thing I want to jump back and mention on is climate change, and you mentioned the radical agenda. I would implore everybody to take a good hard look at climate change. I read articles almost on a daily basis, and embedded in that article, it may not the article may not read the headline may not read climate change, but you read down into an article and it just states climate change as fact. Well, I don't know where those facts are coming from, and I don't trust the source of it. What I'm really saying to you is that I'm not sold on climate change. We know the overall temperature on the globe has went up about a little over 1 degree Fahrenheit in the last so many years, and I don't know what those number of years are. And I often think as a business model, if you're a business, you don't just say, well, we can't do this no more, so we shut down completely, and then a few months later we begin another process, and then that takes 5 years to become productive and to turn a profit. As a nation, not that we're in operation for profit by any means, but the comparison is just the simple process to get there. Should we be good stewards of our nation and the globe? The answer is absolutely yes. Should we compare ourselves to other nations? And does that give us an out of not behaving? No, it doesn't give us an out of it. What we should do is set the standard and then do our very best to see that other nations follow. And so I'm concerned that climate change has become a de facto true narrative. Again, if we look at it as you mentioned, and if we just look and say, okay, we want to be good stewards of the planet we live on, are there better alternative sources of energy that are far more environmentally friendly? Then let's go in that direction. But you can't shut one switch off and then turn the other one on. There's a transition that has to take place so you don't wreck the entire economy from where we live today.
Exactly, and I think here in in my house district we have quite a bit of wind and solar.
I think you're probably one of the most proliferated ones in the state.
I'd say you're correct, but it's economically feasible in the area.
Sure,
it's not that it's the green option to a lot of the landowners that these are going on. The dollars and the economics of it makes sense, and it's good to go with green energy and the green alternative forms of it.
Sure.
But you're right. We're cleaning up the air. We're cleaning up the environment. We're doing the right things and being good stewards of the ground, or in the land as a whole. But at the same time, it costs money to do these things, and you got to have a return on investment. Because if you don't have a return on investment, then you're going to end up going broke, and you're not going to be able to maintain them or take care of them. That's going to create more waste. So I'm also on the environmental committee. It's one of the committees I serve on at the State House, and we were talking about recycling. That was one of our summer study topics this year. So I posed the question, what do we do with these windmill blades if they break? Because they do break on occasion. It's pretty rare.
Are they made out of fiberglass, generally speaking?
Primarily fiberglass. They didn't really have a good way to recycle that fiberglass for them, so they're still working on that. So even though that it's green energy with wind, you still have some components that are not, and the same with the solar panels. There's items in those solar panels that are not recyclable,
which is pretty interesting. And so it completes the cycle essentially.
Right.
Yeah. So you can't create a new form of energy, and then what do you deal with when the blades go bad?
Right. And I'm not knocking wind or solar. It's great for the area. It's great for the economy.
Yeah.
But it's just there's more to it that we can figure out and try and use, and you still want to make those, when you figure out how to recycle those, okay, we still need to make that economically feasible to do too, so it's not a cost burden.
Yeah. Yep. Agree wholeheartedly. So the transition is really the argument. We can all agree on being good stewards of the planet of which we live on, and we should be. And even if no one else is, we should at a minimum. Then the United States should set the stage.
Exactly.
Of how it can be done, and done so in a way that And the last comment I'd like to make on the national scene is one thing we've not talked about, especially during COVID, and rightfully so, is the national deficit. And so we're, I don't know even know where we're at. We're probably at 24, 25 trillion at the moment at some place. I've not heard any statistic for a while.
Yeah, I haven't looked up the
Yeah.
latest number, to be honest with you. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, you bet. And so that's one other thing that we can't spend our way into oblivion either. And so, and I also don't believe we can. I heard this the other day. We can't cut our way out of this thing. We need to grow our way out of it. And I think the Trump economy would look something like bringing jobs back that we have overseas, and which would create more jobs in the United States. We get get the tech industry involved in it, so we're not only bringing jobs back, we're going to be at the high level on technology across the globe, so we can be competitive not only within the borders of the United States but across the globe as well. And so there are good things that can happen. So my opinion, the pathway that the Trump administration has been on needs to continue so that the United States can prosper economically, and we don't continue to spend money that we don't have.
Exactly. And yeah, and to touch on, I think you're on the right path. We need to grow the economy out of it. But at the same time, we could trim a lot of fat in that federal budget when you look at it, all the different items of pork in there. So
Sure.
but you're right. I don't think you can cut enough out of that budget. The deficit's so high that we've got to rapidly grow the economy in combination with cutting that budget.
Right. And I think the two go together certainly. And by cutting, we may hurt more than if we tried to cut our way out of it. We'd hurt more people, I think, than what we can possibly imagine. So there's a lot facing this next administration. There's no two ways about it. So there's a huge contrast. Many feel very set where you're at, and that's a good thing, I guess, in a lot of ways. I simply would say take a good hard look at both platforms, and President Trump may be a little brazen in some of the comments he makes, no doubt about it. But let's look at his track record. He said he was going to do A, B, C, and D, and he did it. And so that's pretty hard to buck against. He was going to grow the economy, and he was going to, one of the biggest things for us, he said he would nominate true conservatives to the Supreme Court, and he's done that. 2, and now number 3 is on the way. And so you got to take a good look at his track record. He has done what he said he was going to do, and that, not that presidents before him haven't, but instead of making promises, he acts.
Yep.
And so he, not the most political person in the world, and probably very good that he isn't. And so, last comments, anything?
Yeah, just on that same point, how many presidents have promised they were going to move the embassy in Israel to
Everyone,
Jerusalem?
I think, yeah.
And President Trump got it done. And you look, he's really running his campaign from a promises kept narrative, and if you look at the track record, you're right. It is promises kept, promises made, promises kept, and this, I think really this upcoming election cycle, you do have a valid choice. You basically have right versus wrong, in my opinion. And when you look at the president and his maybe his brassness and his demeanor and the Twitter feed, what I like to tell people when they ask me, as a Christian, where do you go and how does that line up with you?
Do it, yeah.
So my thing is, I would never elect him to be my preacher, but I will vote for him to be my president next week or on election day.
You will, yeah. And I know I've seen some comments from folks, even people I consider good friends of mine, that have said, as a Christian, how could you vote for President Trump? I can tell you for a fact, one good reason why I couldn't vote for the Democrat Party regardless is on the pro-life stance.
Mm-hmm.
No two ways about it. The threat of stacking the Supreme Court, if we could go the opposite direction, as I mentioned, the Constitution says nothing about numbers.
Mm-hmm.
One person could be a Supreme Court and be the Supreme Court,
Right.
if you will, and that's just the way things are written. So if we're talking about totalitarianism, we're talking about dictatorial leadership. Can't get your way, so you stack the court to get it done.
Yep.
I hope that's not true.
Yep.
I hope it's not true.
And go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead. One final thing I'd like to say too on the president. 4 years ago when I voted for him in the primary and then again in the general election and in this cycle, we talked back and forth about the media and the perspective and just being attacked for the last 4 years. That is another reason why I think President Trump is the right man at the right time, because he's been able to take every single attack
Yeah.
day after day after day, and yet he's still standing strong and fighting for the American people
Mhm.
for $1 a year. He's not even getting paid; he's getting $1 a year to be president, donating the rest of his salary.
No, there's, as you mentioned, there are some negative things as well as there would be with anybody,
Mhm.
no matter what. But promises made, promises kept.
Exactly.
So that's how I can vote for President Trump with a pure conscience. When I look at even if nothing else, we look at the pro-life issue,
Exactly.
following the things the way God would have them, and that's protecting the unborn. No two ways about it, and that's very serious. I know we're getting probably pretty close to being wrapped up here. Any comments at the state level? I need to depict that many times folks get this wrong, but both Representative Prescott and myself, Senator Rotz, we serve at the State House in Indiana. We do not spend any time in Washington, D.C., so we're essentially a local lawmaker. So my district is Randolph, Wayne, Union, and parts of Fayette, Franklin, and Dearborn counties, and Representative Prescott, your district?
So I cover all of Randolph County, all of Jay County, and about a third of Delaware County. So a very rural ag district. Both have similar makeups in
Sure.
that regard.
Sure, yep, and so we share Randolph County together and have become good friends and working together for the benefit of not only our area but the entire state.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on the upcoming session? I'll just share very quickly. The breakout of COVID in March had some pretty detrimental effects on the economy. Our Indiana's fiscal year ends June 30th and begins on July 1st. And on July 1st, we were $1.4 billion with a B dollars in deficit spending for the time from March 19th, essentially somewhere, let's say March 15th to June 30th, just that short period of time, based on sales tax dollars and other sources of revenue that come into the state. That's 1.4 billion, and we're about we're somewhere between 17.5 and 18 billion dollars annually in the state's budget. So we were embarking on we're getting close to about 2% decrease or deficit spending just in that short period of time. Things look better now. But we had been criticized for a long time, ever since I've been there, on having over a $2 billion surplus. Who would have ever thought COVID would hit and we'd shut the economy down, agree or disagree with it? It happened, and we're very fortunate that we operate on conservative principles. We can go all the way back to honestly, the Mitch Daniels era and subsequent. Mitch Daniels, then our now Vice President, then Governor Pence, and now Governor Holcomb. Their philosophies and a conservative majority in the General Assembly that has helped us have that surplus. No two ways about it. That cannot be argued, in my opinion. Any comments?
Yeah, I'm obviously going into the budget year. I mean, it's going to be House Bill 1 again, as it is every 2-year cycle. Very fortunate to live in a state where we have had the foresight to have a rainy day fund, and it's amazing too. You go out and talk to people, say you have a $2 billion surplus at the end of a budget cycle, and they don't realize that's only enough to run the budget about 45 days.
Yeah, that's it.
So, so it's not a huge surplus in that regards, but at the same time, we never would have thought COVID would have been what we needed to use it for, but we had a $2 billion surplus. We got down to 1.5 billion in the hole. I am very fortunate, or I'm very happy that we had the ability to do that in the state. We have really the discipline is what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to tell people no. We can't put money towards this program, but we need to make sure we honestly balance a budget, have enough money of the taxpayer dollars available to operate our departments, because it would really be disappointing to taxpayers and constituents to go, if they had to go to the BMV and you couldn't operate it because you couldn't turn on the lights or pick any department in the state.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we've been very fortunate at thinking ahead, having the foresight, and now it's a constitutional amendment in our state constitution. We have to balance the budget every cycle. So that is going to be priority number one this upcoming session, and also dealing with some other ramifications with COVID. I think COVID's actually showed us some gray areas of code that we may need to clean up. On some other issues, and then this is a redistricting cycle as well. So the census is being done right now, and so it has the dynamics of being in where are we going to operate? Are we going to be in the House chamber? Are we going to be in the government center? That's still being decided.
Social distancing and everything,
right.
Yeah.
So that's still being decided right now by the leadership team, and on our side's looking at how we're going to handle things. I know you guys in the Senate are looking at your own rules and procedures. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic, and it's one of those. It's going to be one of those years where everyone's going to be doing their best and reaching out and talking to constituents and making sure we're doing our best to serve the public.
Yep. I know folks often say that we're facing some really challenging times, especially when we look at, as Representative Prescott mentioned, we look at the budget, and we are required to have a balanced budget. There's a provision in there that the General Assembly would have to come together to authorize anything but.
Right.
And so we can't go over, nor would the governor be able to do so, or the executive branch by themselves without the approval of the General Assembly, and that's to protect the public, to protect all of us. That not one person or one branch of government be able to cause us to go into deficit spending. So that I agree, that's an incredibly important piece of where we're headed in the 21 session, and it'll be my first time, and I know it's your first time on the redistricting piece as well. And so I know the U.S. Census Bureau is working frantically, literally, I'll use the word frantically, to get those numbers correct and get them in as best possible in the midst of a global pandemic has really caused a lot of chaos, I think, with the census and those who have boots on the ground trying to get it done. I know a few people that have participated in it. It's a difficult task, and so it'll be an incredibly interesting year in the Indiana General Assembly, no two ways about it. So I know one of the things that's near and dear to my heart, and I spend a great deal of my time on education in the state, and so a lot of concerns there with shutting down essentially March 19th and never going back, the education loss between March and then whatever the end of school year would be at a local school district sometime in June, and then we begin the year with some school districts who delayed their beginning because of COVID, and we have them all over the board because we have local control, so the state doesn't dictate. So there are a lot of schools that are face-to-face, a lot of schools are hybrids, they're partially in, partially out, and you as parents are dealing with that in your households on a daily basis. And so I have to say, I think the school districts, for the most part, the leadership is doing the very best job they possibly can. The teachers have stepped up to the plate and have been fluid enough to do the very best to educate the students But we're facing some very much so difficulties in the education space as well. The learning loss and how we make up for the gaps. Are we continuing learning loss at the moment for some districts? The answer is yes. What does that look like when it comes to the end of the year? Do we have a COVID outbreak, that's mixed with the flu as we head into the fall season or the cold and flu season? There are a lot of variables there, and so some of it's we have the ability, to mitigate, and others I'm not certain we do. So we're doing our best, I think, across the state for the most part. I don't agree with everything, nor would I don't think, but
Right.
I think individually school districts are doing the best they can.
I agree. We've both been in constant communication with the superintendents and school
Right.
leaders, and each school's a little bit different and doing their own plan and figuring out their way. And this is a learning experience for all of us,
Right.
right? And it's new to all of us in this realm. And this also brings in one of the other important topics that I think we need to really focus on this next session is rural broadband. It's affecting our local school corporations and our local businesses,
Right.
and just making sure we have that internet accessibility out so you can do the remote learning, the e-learning is needed, and also just to operate businesses from home. And so I think that's another
Telehealth, there are all kinds
telehealth,
of issues.
yeah. So that's another important topic that I think we need to take
Yeah.
a good hard look at and see how we can promote and expand on rural broadband throughout our state.
It's a word of caution. There is all I say is there's another problem that's not all that easy, right? When we talk about it, to conquer it in a year, I don't know how you do that.
I don't necessarily think you do conquer it in a year personally.
I agree,
The example I like to use on expansion of rural broadband is look at rural electrification back in the 20s and 30s. It took about 15 to 20 years to really go from 5% electrification to 95%.
Right.
And I think broadband is really in that same realm, because when you talk about fiber to the home, that's not feasible in every area, unfortunately. It's just
Not
it's
cost effective.
it's
You
not
can't-
cost
there's no
effective.
way, yeah.
So you hear people say they're an all of the above energy guy. Well, I'm an all of the above broadband guy, and what I mean by that is I'm fiber to the home where feasible, wireless where feasible. Elon Musk, whether you like him or not on some of his other issues, in businesses, he's got that low orbit satellite internet infrastructure that's kind of intriguing to me. It may work. We'll see. I hope it does. But so I'm not dead set on one specific technology, but let's utilize really all of the above and see what works best in each area, because the line of sight wireless, it just doesn't work in southern Indiana in the hills. And
No, absolutely not. It's out of question in southern Indiana. It works a little better up here where we're at, but still there are impediments in the way. No two ways about it. So that's another technological advancement that I think is probably the best answer. I'm not even certain, today that it's wise to run fiber. Maybe we need to do that until we figure out the next best thing, so that we don't have a bunch of fiber in the ground at a tremendous expense. And then, 2 years down the road, when we're just about done, we find out here's this whole new thing, and but we may end up there.
Right.
I hope not, but we may end up there. Rural or broadband is an incredible issue, especially in rural Indiana when it comes to school, and the necessity for those who chose virtual. But we also know, even with let's just use Indianapolis Public Schools within Marion County, 100% of those. They tell us that 100% of those homes have access to internet, but the second thing is, can they afford it? And so, from a school level, there's conversation in the state. Maybe we can take dollars that we set aside for school books and transition some of those dollars to access, or for the cost. I want to use my words correctly there, to help pay for the cost of it, and maybe remove the necessity of hard copy of books or something along that to offset the cost. So we're talking about a lot of different things in order to make that happen for those families who cannot afford to pay the monthly fees as well. So there's a lot happening. In fact, the matter is that it wasn't AT&T; it was another large company that donated like I don't know 1,500 or 1,800 hotspots, and with usability for like 4 years. It was a lower company, a cell phone company that did it. When I say lower, they just had a lower share of the market
Right.
space, and so a lot of good things happening out there when it comes to it as well. So unfortunately, the Band-Aid is probably not that easy, especially on our side of the state. But there are some great efforts happening here as well, and I think creativity is part of the answer to get it out there as well. And so if you don't have it, talk to your school, and I'm certain they've already tried their best to help you if you didn't have it, to help you get to the other side of the line so that you can have virtual access for your kids while they're home during this time. With that, Representative Prescott, I'm done talking. I need a drink of water. It's been a good conversation. Anything else from you?
Well, I just really looking forward to being able to serve the public this upcoming session at the State House. Given the opportunity, I am in an election cycle here, so Lord willing and voter willing, I look forward to serving alongside you again next session. And just like anything else, we've talked about some of the topics we're going to cover next session, but there are going to be a whole host of issues that we do not even know what's on the table yet, that as bills get filed from around the state. So like always, I enjoy the conversation. And
awesome. Yeah, thank you. And from my perspective, I would just implore of you, let's all do our due diligence in looking at the track record of what we have nationally and certainly locally as well, and the election. And Indiana is a good place to live. I think we're overwhelmingly have great people that serve for the right reasons. My opinion again, and I believe that Indiana is in pretty good shape as compared to many states that surround us in a lot of different ways. Financially, we've been conservative, and as the representative has mentioned, those are not easy decisions to make, because everybody has interest, and everybody comes to the State House and wants their interest to be covered. And we've been blessed to have the leadership we've had, and so that's part of my answer to where we're at. We've been blessed, and I'm fortunate to serve in the General Assembly that has been responsible, both from a financial perspective and in many ways. Doesn't mean we don't have troubles. Don't get me wrong. We got problems, but they're surmountable. We can overcome them. So, okay. Thank you very much for listening. This is our first go at it, and hopefully we'll have another opportunity here at DS1 Live, who we appreciate, Scott Owen, for making the effort and giving us the opportunity to share with you today. Look forward to it again. Thank you.